Introduction. Grammar is the language framework and system of meaning. Every language seems to have a grammar, and person speaking in similar language will communicate because they need to really understand the grammar structure, which is the rules of meaning. According to Batson, language without grammar is going to be messy, and it is harder to understand language without looking for this basic framework. So grammar language will be impossible to learn effectively without following structural rules, as said in Ronald and Celia. They found that grammar plays a very important role in the study of language. The purpose of grammar is to educate those who use English to express their thoughts properly, both in speaking and writing. Research by Azad indicate that grammar is an essential and inseparable part in language teaching. So teachers have tended to use communicative activities in teaching grammar instruction. It is mean that in teaching English as a foreign language, it is necessary to consider not only how learners acquire grammatical competence, but also how they learn to communicate. That is how they develop the communication competence. And the importance of teaching English grammar as a foreign language, various methods and approach have been applied to enhance learning competence. Savage, Biderling, and Price recapitulate 6 approaches that have a significant impact on grammar instruction, including grammar translation method, direct method, audio-lingual method, cognitive approach, natural approach, and communicative approach. Among them, the communicative approach, commonly called CLT, is one of the current trends of language teaching. According to Lopez and Agulo, the main intention of CLT is designed to teach communicative competence, which involve part of speech and tenses as a sentence construction. A teaching technique that refers to several aspects of language, include the use of language for multiple purpose and function. Distinguish between formal and informal oral and written discourse. Based on the statement above, it can be concluded that grammar should be taught in communicative ways which focus on developing the language to perform the skill. Using CLT to teach grammar in second language classroom is an effort to improve student attitude towards language learning and to have positive effect on their learning process. Emphasis placed on grammatical mistakes and fear of making grammar error has a negative impact on students. Those are related to the finding of a study conducted by Nur Fakhra. On his study, he revealed that students feel bored by learning English grammar because make them confused and lazy to learn. Further, Wilkins, the one who providing Europe with a standardized program for foreign language teaching, proposed a national syllabus Europe with a standardized program for foreign language teaching. Proposed a national syllabus which did not organize the syllabus in terms of grammatical structure, but rather define in what learners needed to interact with each other. It means the focus of CLT is language learning through communication, not through mechanical presentation of grammatical form. The use of CLT in teaching grammar in the second language classroom is a means of changing the attitude of the student towards language learning and positively influencing their way of learning. Furthermore, Larson Freeman describe the key principle of CLT approach that can be summarized as follows. Communicative competence is the primary goal. Authentic material are used to encourage students to use the language. The language learning is learned by trial and error. Students mostly work in pairs. Small groups, grammar is best learned through the process of communication. Teachers have role as facilitator and monitor, and students as a negotiator are individually responsible to make themselves understand and be understood in the process of communication. From the statement, it can be concluded that using CLT provides students in repetition, accuracy, and memorization grammar patterns, but they demand the student in order to negotiate meaning, accuracy, and memorizing grammar patterns. But they demand the student in order to negotiate meaning and connect meaningfully in foreign context. Also, teacher will need to build exercise in the CLT classroom that enables students to learn well in target language. The adoption of CLT in Indonesia language teaching curriculum has gone through several changes and development. Rahman stated that the latest curriculum in Indonesia, which usually called as Curriculum 2013 or K13, adopts CLT approach into its implementation as cited in. Not only the popularity of CLT keeps increasing as many teachers apply the concept of CLT in the classroom. From some previous related study on learning English anxiety, a research study was conducted to find out students' teacher perception in teaching grammar instruction and communicative language teaching classroom. Literature review: the concept of communicative language teaching. Communicative language teaching, or CLT, is one approach to language teaching. This approach was found from the awareness that language is a system for communication, not just a set of the rules. It switched the emphasis of traditional language teaching to grammar and teacher-centered classes to the active use of authentic language in learning and acquisition. CLT is an approach that emphasizes communicative ability. Content that CLT describes as a set of general principles grounded in the notion of communicative competence as the goal of second and foreign language teaching, a new approach that has evolved as our understanding of the process of second language learning has developed. From the definition above, it can be concluded that communicative language teaching, or CLT, is a language teaching that emphasizes interaction as concept of main and final aim of language learning. Role Role of student teachers and grammar instruction in CLT. Communicative language teaching emphasizes on self-direction for student. Teachers no longer rely on activities that involve repetition, accuracy, and the memorization of sentence. They require students to communicate in context and communicate meaningfully in foreign language. As proposed that this is important for active development of a new language and CLT as a delegate towards themselves, the process of learning and the objective of learning emerging from and interacting in the role of the negotiator, both in groups and in classroom activity. In CLT, students expected support in classroom activities. Students are recommended to using activities in pairs of group or group. As research from OTA reported that when students act in pair or small group of or peers, they perform various tasks using the target language for numerous functions, e.g., responding to the questions, making demands, and giving feedback, as it is in Fari. From the statement, it can be concluded that CLT allows students to interact more with other learners rather than with the teacher and working in pairs or small groups. One of effective methods to boost students' communicative ability. Communicative activities play an important role in teaching communicative language. As Richard State and communicative competence. There are several approaches that help students involve learner in communication. Further, Littlewood differs type two main categories in communicative activities. There are functional communicative activities and social interaction activities. Approach to teaching grammar have undergone many change. These changes have characterized grammar teaching to move from a grammar based approach to a communicative approach. Lesson framework. Discuss that grammar in communicative language teaching or CLT is presented as a way to comfort students in deliver their meaning appropriately. Grammar instruction can be performed both deductively and inductively, but focus on the meaning and function of forms in the situational context and the role of the interlocutors. In summary, inductively or deductively grammar can be taught in communicative language teaching. Some students learn with rules of grammar while others need to understand the grammatical structure. Methodology, research, design, participant, and locale of the study. The study used in extrinsic case study method as the way to collect the data. State case study is qualitative approach that involves the study about issue explored through one or more case or over time through detail. In-depth data collection involving multiple sources of information. We use intrinsic case study because the study design was focused on the case itself. The case present an unusual or unique situation. The study was conducted in Islamic Junior High School Palembang, which is English teacher and student of the ninth grades at MTS Negeri 2 Palembang by using purposeful sampling technique. The aim of purposeful sampling was to choose the individual that could provide the information rich and the most detailed information to help the researcher answer the research question. Based on the data obtained from interview, it was found some perception toward grammar instruction in communicative language teaching. We found that most of the teachers agreed that a learning process, group work, or pair work was designed to promote communication in the classroom. However, all the teachers also perceived that in applying group work, students were able to interact well. The data obtained from interview also showed that the teacher recommended pair or group work interaction was effective activities. Therefore, the teacher had to provide their learners with opportunities to engage in meaningful interaction. The teacher 1 and 2 claim in teaching English we had to make the class more lively. So group discussion are one of method that give students opportunity to explore problems themselves. Based on the data obtained from interview, we found that most of students agreed that by correcting an error has been considered helpful in achieving successful communicative competence as the student perceive because the learners can know where the errors. Then as student 2 said important because by correction the learners know where the mistakes and can correct them. The student 4 also said, my teacher always correct my error clearly so I know and how to fix my mistake. However, the student also did not feel bad when the teacher corrected their mistake. As the student 3 said, I often make a grammar mistake when speaking English, but my teacher correct it in a good way. The role and contribution of students in learning process. The data gotten from the interviews also revealed that the role and contribution of students in learning process. The student perceived that the students should took part on the process of learning. In addition, students also argued that the role and contribution of students And the learning is a receiver than lesson. The student first claim as an active learner who ready to answer the teacher's question. Discussion. The first was the role of teacher in classroom in teaching grammar instruction. In communicative language teaching, teachers act as motivator in the teaching learning process. And to develop their activities, the students perceive that the role of teacher in the classroom are independent within the learning teaching group, give motivation to student and teacher facilitate all student need. Say that being proficient in English and applying appropriate stories to it to teach. Teachers also required to bring their own attitude and personality into their teaching class and realize good teaching through discussion, negotiation, be available to students and reliable source of information of student when needed. The fifth was the role and contribution of students in the learning process. The research showed that teaching grammar instruction in CLT classroom should be balanced and teaching English between tasks and activity must be balanced. Also in teaching English language, students should not only mastering the theory but also practicing the theory. This finding was in agreement should not only with previous research by Sukarno, who found that the English teacher could determine how English to be taught to young learners, learn English through activities in social context, and should taking part on the process of learning. This finding was supported by Jessica. She found that the teacher in her study addressed the importance of learner autonomy in language learning process. It enables learners to become autonomous when they chart of their own learning. Conclusion. Boredom to boredom. The research only focused to find out the teacher and student perception in grammar instruction in communicative language teaching because the limitation of time by knowing the teacher and students perception in teaching and learning grammar instruction and communicative language teaching because the in limitation of time we expected students consider grammar as an important part in learning English language. So this study can inspire students and increase their interest in learning grammar in CLT classroom. So it was better for students to start using the language communicatively at the grassroots level. We hope the teacher help the student to consider a better way in teaching grammar instruction in CLT room. The teacher should know environment in the class to promote communication in CLT classroom. Also, the teacher should act as motivator in the teaching and learning process into increase student opportunities to practice English. Because in learning English language is not only mastering grammar but also to increase student opportunity to practice English language. Thus, we hope that the present study can be useful for the next future researchers who are interested to excavate more information about teachers and students' perception in grammar instruction and communicative language teaching. Thank you.